Hi, Trevor White here, and I'm a marriage and family therapist that specializes in working with infidelity and betrayal trauma. I wanted to talk a little bit today about what betrayal trauma is and how you can address it. Betrayal trauma is one of the most devastating things a person can experience because it happens within this safe, attached relationship. And usually it's not feasible for you to no longer be in the relationship, right? So there's a lot of examples of what this might look like. It could be, dishonesty around finances. It could be a sexual relationship with another partner. It could be flirtatious relationship that, rides this border that's really hard to define for people. Now, what becomes really challenging about this right away for people too is that they might experience the trauma, but their partner may disagree with them about if it's trauma or not. Right. So you're dealing with this initial wave of very intense emotion, and not always having a partner that is comfortable owning or validating that. Now, societally, we have this really kind of limiting idea about this where we want to label something as cheating or not, right? And so this is what happens very often early on in the therapeutic process where one person is really wanting to label and identify something as being cheating, as being a violation of the agreed upon norms in a relationship. And the other person is disagreeing with that idea. Right. Of course, a lot of people, when they commit some of these acts, they're not trying to violate the agreed upon norms in the relationship, but that's what ends up happening. So being able to define right away for yourself and in the therapeutic process what the actual wound is so important. Right. So right away, what we try to do when we work with folks is figure out like, what is the trust wound here? Right. So to do that really requires you to understand the context of the relationship, right? And so when I work with folks, I really try to kind of gain an understanding on what their agreed upon norms are in the relationship. So, for example, some couples engage in, ethical non-monogamy. So they might say, yes, we are going to allow each other, if we go on a business trip, right, to have a sexual encounter, if that happens, go on a dating app, things like that. But that's, agreed upon in the context of like a business trip. Right. So if someone does that in a business trip, communicates clearly with their partner about that, then that isn't a betrayal trauma. But if that happens, if the partner continues to be on the dating app when they come home or is on the dating app and having sexual flirtatious encounters outside of the agreed upon norms, then that would be, a betrayal. It would have been a violation of those agreed upon norms. And it can become very tricky. Right. Oftentimes we think about cheating or betrayal trauma with these kind of very clear black and white traditional kind of concepts. So a couple in a monogamous relationship, someone has sex with somebody that's not in the relationship. Okay. That feels a little bit easy to define for people, but usually that's not what we're talking about. The situations that come into my office often are, okay, someone was talking on Instagram with an ex-girlfriend or sharing reels with them. Someone was developing a relationship with a coworker that, started to feel flirtatious, these sorts of things that go into a little more of a gray area, right? So understanding the context of your relationship, how what happened violates some of the agreed upon norms, that's what we're trying to figure out right away. Now, what's challenging for the person that's suffering from the betrayal trauma is that the cause of your trauma, your partner, this loved one, this person you have an attachment relationship with that's so important for your life, is also the cure, right? So the things that, can be so painful and hurtful are related to them. And they're also the person that can provide you with reassurance, safety, and grounding. So it can be very messy. So there are kind of two things that are important to kind of focus on then. First is your own self-grounding, right? Recognizing there's going to be times where because of the injury that happened, I'm not going to be able to rely on my partner for the safety, security, trust that they have been providing for a long time, perhaps. So I'm going to need to do some of that grounding work on my own, right? It's individual therapy, breathing techniques, exercise, talking to other friends and family about this, that's a part of the work you need to do. And then obviously, hopefully therapy, this is where, therapists come in, working with your partner to figure out how can I experience some safety from them, even in very small ways. Now, I'm going to do another video here soon about how we build trust, but right away, I think it's important to just identify, going through a trauma like this is very significant. It's normal to have some really intense emotions, anxiety, depression, difficulty sleeping, difficulty eating, being hypervigilant or, paranoid even about your partner's decisions and choices. But that is a normal part of this process. Now, what I find to be really meaningful is going through this journey with people, right? I see this all the time in my office, is starting from a place of, significant trauma, but then, developing a sense of curiosity with one another to walk through this journey that usually lasts months. You really need to track your progress with a calendar, not a stopwatch, is what I always say to people. But it's super meaningful to get to the end of that. And couples that do arrive at a place of hopefully acceptance and forgiveness at the end, which is a long journey, find that they've really created more depth and meaning in their relationship than existed before. So even though betrayal trauma is devastating and life changing, it's also an opportunity, right? I would encourage you to try to think about how this could be an opportunity for you to deepen your own ability to care for and connect to yourself, and deepen your ability to trust and grow with your partner. Now, constellation therapy, we specialize in this kind of work. So if you are suffering from betrayal trauma or dealing with betrayal trauma, no matter where you are in that journey, we would love to work with you. So reach out to us at our website, and we can get started and begin this really meaningful journey of healing and recovery.